Hello everyone, my name is Evan MacArthur, and today we're going to be discussing a very and politics. Without further ado, let's get into today's topic. So if you paid attention to news media or anything related to video games and school shootings that have been going on quite often, you would notice that video games and also rock and roll have been quite an interesting target for these types of situations. And one of the things that was brought to my mind was the fact that usually when it comes to school shootings or any type of violent related incident that happens in the new world today, occasionally media tends to attack the video game community as a whole and say that the video games as a whole are the reason why we have these types of situations. So I figured I'd take the time to talk about the reasonings why this may happen, or some of the things that people are misguided in regards to these types of situations. So one of the things that touched me the most is, first of all, we're going to look at the rock and roll first, because this started back in like the 70s and the 80s, maybe even the late 90s as well. And one of the things that started off was that we noticed we had bands like Led Zeppelin, Metallica, I think Black Sabbath was another very popular one, and occasionally what would happen is that there weren't necessarily violent situations that would happen, but anyone who would listen to these types of topics or listen to these types of music were considered, satanists in some way. They were considered worshippers of the devil just because they were listening to a certain type of style of music. Now, nowadays that's not really the case, thankfully, but now we have people who are attacking the video games instead of the rock and roll nowadays. Now, I'm going to touch on one particular game, and that is the Dungeons & Dragons. Now, I myself have not actually had a chance to play this game due to the fact that it's not really my style of game, but it's a role-playing type of game very similar to World of Warcraft and League of Legends. I'm sure a lot of you have played those types of games before if you're into that type of stuff, but one of the biggest things that touched me with this type of game is that it's a game that involves a lot of satanic type of rituals inside of the game. It's not necessarily focused on satanic type of stuff, but the reason why people focused a lot on this game back when it was out, I think it was like the late 90s that this game became popular before League of Legends, is because of the fact that the game focused so much on this type of content, and you had these board games that made you look like a satanist, and they pretty much assumed that anyone who was associated with this type of game or took part in this type of game, wore t-shirts. If you went to some other school with this type of t-shirt that says Dungeons & Dragons with that type of game, people assumed, oh, that kid's a satanist, let's stay away from him just because of the fact that he's associated with this type of stuff. And that's simply just not the case, and that's one thing I wanted to stress a lot in this documentary, is because of the fact that media is attacking people just because they like a certain style of their enjoyment. And it's just simply a video game. People focus a lot on this. And one other type of game, this is a really, really controversial type of game that came out. I believe it was 1997 this game came out. It was known as Postal. I'll throw some information up on this on screen as you guys can see. Postal was a very violent game that was created in 97. And I believe this was when ESRB was just recently instated. If you're not familiar with ESRB, you should be familiar with ESRB because it's what you should be reading nowadays, specifically to the kids that are buying these violent types of video games nowadays. And one thing that really people tend to not pay attention to are that this is what ESRB is for. This is the reason why we have ESRB. It is basically a rating system for the types of video games that come out. Like, let's say Grand Theft Auto, for example. I'm not too big on that type of game, but that game pretty much promotes anyone to go around and just shoot random people on the street. And it's the same thing with Postal. Postal, I've never actually played it before. I have no intentions of playing it due to the content inside of that game. But the game pretty much promotes anyone to go out there and start shooting random people. Now, here's where politics and the media comes into play with this type of content. People are attacking they're attacking the gamers just because of the fact that they're attacking the developers. They're attacking pretty much anyone who associates themselves with this type of video game for some odd reason. And they assume that anyone who plays these types of games is subject to becoming a violent person later on in their life. Now, I myself I've seen a lot of people play these types of games, whether it be Grand Theft Auto. I've never seen anyone play Postal before, but shooter games specifically, people assume that these people who go out and do these school shootings or these movie theater shootings, like the one in Chicago. The one in Chicago, the movie theater shooting in Chicago, I think it was. The first place they looked to was gamers. For some odd reason, they started looking to Grand Theft Auto video game, which had just recently came out. They started looking a lot towards the other type of games that came out, and Postal was another prime candidate for shootings as well. It's actually, believe it or not, it's a fairly popular game. It was rated M for mature, but what I really want to stress on is that this is the reason why we have, video game ratings. ESRB was created for this reason, because of the fact that people were attacking this. What I'm trying to say is, if you see a game that's rated M, there's no reason why a 13-year-old should be able to purchase this type of game, because the reason why it's rated M is rated M for mature. They only expect mature people to play this game. Let's be honest. Most 13-year-olds nowadays, if they're playing, let's say, Call of Duty, for example, I'll throw Exhibit A, for example.
Game is so fucking shit, bro!
Or even Exhibit B.
No! Oh! Damn!
All it really sums up to is that media should not try to attack the video game community as a whole, just because of the fact that the game and content involved inside of that game is violent. There are plenty of times where I've seen people saying we should ban violent video games, we should ban this and that, we should ban this type of game, and there have actually, believe it or not, there have actually been games where the content was banned. Like, for example, I think there was a video game, I'll use this as an example, I'll put up an article as well. The video game known as Modern Warfare 2, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, I'm sure a lot of you guys have played it when you were in high school or middle school, whatever it was, but that game, probably one of my favorite games, to be honest. When that game was released, there was actually a mission called No Russian. The mission itself as a whole, what you were required to do is you were required to go into a Russian airport disguised as a CIA agent working for the Russians, and what you were, or not Russians, you were working for these terrorist group, and what you were required to do in the mission was you were required to actually kill every single person in that airport. Now, this mission drew up so much controversy, even though it was just a video game. CNN attacked it multiple times. I'm pretty sure MSNBC went after it multiple times for the mission. And what had happened was, when the video game was released worldwide, the United States gave you the option to skip the mission. I myself actually skipped the mission because I thought that it was a little bit disturbing just to kind of have that in a type of video game. I'm very careful with the type of stuff that I play nowadays. But when the mission came out, it was actually banned in Russia. I believe it was completely cut out in Australia. And other countries, they removed it as well, but the video game was still released worldwide, but just they gave people the option to do whatever it was they wanted to do with that type of mission. And another prime example that I wanted to mention in this video is Doom. Now, Doom is a new, not necessarily new and upcoming video game, but they're actually releasing a newer version of Doom to the PS4 consoles and pretty much all the other new stuff that's coming out. But Doom is a very old game. It's been out since I was a kid. Actually, I think it was out before I was... No, it came out a few years after I was born. But the game is basically about this little alien race. I think you have to go after some little alien or something like that. Some alien race, and you gotta kill a bunch of stuff. But one of the big things about that game is the amount of gore associated with the game. And a lot of people, more specifically like Fox News, a couple people on YouTube, just media in general, were all attacking these violent games that have excessive amounts of gore and blood in them, and they thought that it would promote people to do more and more types of violent things in their future lives. And I guess this is why another example, like the Virginia Tech massacre, I don't exactly remember the year of it, but I will put a link of it on the screen. But the Virginia Tech massacre was another example that people looked at, and they started looking at the gaming community and developers again, wondering why people are allowed to play these violent video games. Why do they even exist in the first place? And it's just one thing that people tend to confuse a lot with just real life stuff and everything. But one of the things that I really want to touch on in this video is, what should we do about stuff like this? Should we continue to allow developers and gamers to play these violent types of video games, or should we put an end to it? Now here's my thoughts on the whole thing. what we really need to do with these types of games and comparing them to all the crazy situations, now we got ISIS to deal with and all that other type of stuff, completely irrelevant by the way, but what we should do about it is we should be more careful about the type of games that we're selling to these people. We have a large variety of the gaming community is mostly children. Unfortunately, that's the case, usually between the ages of 12 to about 17. That's a vast majority of gamers nowadays. But what we need to do is we need to be more careful with games that are rated M. Now, rated M games are for ages 17 and up. There's a reason why those games are rated 17 and up, because they expect people who are over the age of 17 to be more mature about the content. They expect you to realize, okay, this is not real life. This is a video game. They don't expect you to go copy the activities in real life. They don't expect you to go and sit there and randomly steal someone's car like you do in GTA all the time. They expect you to not take any of it seriously at all, and that's why these games are rated M. But the fact that we're still able to sell these types of games to those types of children, that's the reason why we have media, Fox News, MSNBC, we have all these companies coming after developers and gamers as a whole, as to why as if we're the issue with the whole thing. So anyways, I'm going to leave you guys with the rest of the documentary. I hope you guys leave some of your comments. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say about it. Let me know if you have any comments, any suggestions as to how such a solution or a problem could be solved, should I say. And anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is Evan signing off.